I hope we don't get into a situation where it's pay for play.
Is millions of dollars too much, or should there be no limit?
I support it. It's fine. It's great.
Who's guarding the henhouse here?
Welcome to a special presentation of KTLA Sports. I'm Darren Horton. Wealth disparity has become a hot topic over the past several years, though it's been a reality in college sports for decades. It's also why we are now witnessing historic change throughout athletic programs across the country, as well as a tactical reassessment within the NCAA. College sports have always provided something for everyone.
Edney going the distance. Yes!
An opportunity for student bodies and the diehards to come together, sharing camaraderie during special moments while paying tribute to the achievements of enthusiastic student athletes.
The national championship on the line right here. He's going for the corner. He's got it. Vince Young scores.
Though what we've grown up with and what we think we understand about college sports is beginning to change.
A lot of this is happening very quickly, so it's almost we're learning as we're running the course.
The first major seismic shift, decades in the making, began last summer, when after years of intraction and bickering, the NCAA relented, allowing its athletes to finally accept payments.
I think it's an exciting time for athletes, for businesses out there, and for some schools in NCAA, but it's one that needs to be kind of traversed in a very meticulous and careful way.
Known as name, image, likeness, or NILs, the policy allows athletes to hire agents and strike their own deals for compensation, including endorsements, card signings, youth camp instructions, and several other avenues that before were never allowed. This shift, however, does not include allowing schools or institutions to pay the athletes directly, beyond educational benefits and legal stipends.
Basically, there are only two rules. It can't be pay for play, and it can't be something that's an incentive, recruiting incentive. And we all know that that's broad, and there may be some schools that find a way around it.
Many are already testing the new boundaries. USC quarterback Caleb Williams, a transfer from Oklahoma, recently struck an NIL deal with a real estate equity fund. Kentucky's Oscar Tshiebwe, a Congolese forward and one of the most dominant players in the country, took to Twitter to announce he was ready to entertain offers.
A lot of times, the universities take good care of you, and you get, cost of attendance, stipends, and whatnot. But a lot of times, it may not be enough for you, truly. So the opportunity for you to make your own money and make a way for yourself and really treat yourself like a brand in the business, that's the best education you could really get.
Almost everyone agrees this was long past due. For decades, the NCAA and its member institutions refused to entertain the idea that athletes should be compensated, saying a full ride scholarship was payment enough. Many argue this was narrow-minded and an effort by the governing body, conferences, and individual programs to hoard enormous profits from increasing merchandising deals and television revenue, all the while treating its athletes like indentured servants. In 2009 came the Ed O'Bannon antitrust suit against the NCAA, a suit quickly followed by others. But it wasn't until the Supreme Court stepped in that the NCAA realized it was finally out of moves. A 2021 ruling stated antitrust laws prevented the NCAA from restricting payments to athletes. The vote was unanimous.
The idea that on July 30th last year, at literally the midnight hour, the NCAA acted on NIL legislation or NIL issues is frankly totally absurd to me. You know, they knew it was coming. They knew it was coming, you know, years ago.
I'm pro player because I think there's time. Our guys are treated like pros. They get the same scrutiny in the media, definitely on social media. And they're not as old and as grizzled as me to never look at that stuff. They do, and it affects them. There's no doubt about it, because they're young people and they have feelings.
Though while athletic compensation is now open for business, there are yellow lights in the distance. After a February 2022 meeting where the directors of Division I raised concerns, the NCAA announced it would review NIL policies to get a better idea of the impact on student athletes and possible recruiting violations.
We've had people contact us about giving every player on our roster some kind of sponsorship for next season, but we can't make it happen. We can only put the two parties in touch, meaning the corporation or individual, with our players or our team, and let them take it from there.
Paying athletes might have the most attention, but it is one of the many modifications underway in college sports. At the beginning of 2022, the NCAA ratified a new and amended constitution, one that clears the way for the conferences and schools to have more of a say in how their respective institutions are managed. Good news for the powerhouse conferences and the Alabamas and USCs of the landscape. But how about the smaller Division I institutions or the lower divisions?
If the guardrails are taken away, Power 5 conferences, you know, the Pac-12, the SEC, the Big 10, Big 12, they get a little more of an edge.
There are some 350 Division I schools, all with various priorities and budgets. Figuring out the matrix for how the NCAA's regulatory rollback will all work on all levels will take time.
With the rules all over the place, with uncertainty on how those rules are applied, and with a lack of enforcement, you're seeing a gap grow between the haves and have-nots, and that's not what we want in college athletics. Name, image, and likeness should be a great thing. 95% of it is a great thing. We just got to figure out that other 5%.
It's a factor nowadays. It is. Anybody that says it's not is just simply not paying attention. It's another area for us with the support that we have here in our program, the obvious opportunities being in Los Angeles. I think it's going to continue to be another way that we as a program can separate ourselves, and we absolutely plan to do that.
It wasn't just players demanding the right to be paid. The universities and conferences for decades claimed they were forced to carry too much of the financial burden for everyone else. And then there were the alumni and agents, the latter frequently complaining of being treated like lepers around campuses due to the misdeeds of a few bad actors.
When you're signing billion-dollar TV contracts and charging high ticket prices at collegiate stadia and arena, there is a professionalism attached to this. It's the abstraction of amateurism, as if that exists much anymore.
As always, with change of this magnitude, there is no shortage of anxiety and skepticism. Fear of the unknown is not unique to college sports, and many assume that the NCAA and those involved will figure it all out eventually.
I think it's time for massive change. And I think that the vast majority, again, around the table on all sides and all of it, I think everybody acknowledges we got to do something different.
So in this initial rendering, are we witnessing the NCAA blowing itself up, as some have claimed, or are these changes more the inevitable concession and fundamental admission that the time had finally arrived to get with the program or risk perishing into a pool of irrelevance? So much now on the table and up for discussion, including what these changes will ultimately mean for the future of cherished programs and the structure of divisional athletics. We'll delve into that next when College Sports Pay to Play continues. In many respects, college athletics follows traditional business models with a heavier emphasis on money-making sports like football and basketball. But with significant restructuring now underway, can the old traditions guarantee athletic survival for the smaller schools? 'Our David Pingalore went looking for some answers.
Well, The one thing most agree is when it comes to NILs and other changes to the NCAA Constitution, the smaller Division I schools and mid-majors will continue to have an uphill climb in terms of funding and, of course, recruiting.
I don't think players should make a decision about where they go to school relative to how much money they're going to make.
Nick Saban has certainly earned the right to his opinion, one of the highest paid coaches in college football and winner of 7 national championships, the last 6 coming into Alabama.
Constant excellence. Bama bludgeons the Buckeyes, and Saban steps past Paul Bryant.
But he also has plenty to work with. Alabama reportedly spent almost $180 million in 2021 on its sports programs, with football leading the way. No headline there. Striking large television deals, finding players, offering exposure, and providing enticing facilities will never be a problem for the Crimson Tide or any other big-name university. When it comes to the power conferences, membership has its privileges.
It's hard to imagine them having more power. They have plenty right now, but that's the concern on my part. You know, that at some point they're going to find a way to let's just play this game amongst ourselves. Let's just compete amongst ourselves. Let's not compete with the Pepperdines of the world. And to me, that would be tragic.
Pepperdine is a picturesque private university on the Malibu coast. The Waves compete in Division I, and athletic director Steve Potts is well acquainted with the numbers and hurdles.
You've been on the UCLA campus, the USC campus. You can tell right away their facilities are more modern than ours, at a higher level than ours. We're working on some of ours, but that's always going to be a disadvantage for schools like us. But that's okay. Just don't take away the opportunity to compete. That's what really scares me, is that at some point, football will drive the Power 5 conferences to the point where they just decide to separate from the rest of us.
The new Constitution calls for turning over more autonomy to the conferences and institutions within Division I.
What packages are being offered to student athletes at a Power 5 school? Are connections being made between boosters and student athletes? NIL is there to allow compensation, but it's not there, in my opinion, just to be a payment method to induce a student athlete to come to a school. But my question is, who's guarding the henhouse here?
Much has been made of, the advantages bigger Division I schools, have had, not only today, but in yesteryear as well. At the expense of lower schools? I mean, is that the case, you think?
I don't think I'm one that would say it's at the expense of lower schools. The gap continues to widen. But again, we've always dealt with that gap. And we feel like we can compete.
And what of those institutions that don't offer the cachet or financial opportunities of well-established programs such as those in Division II or III? Many with proud athletic and educational traditions, but far fewer options for athletes to strike their own deals. Caltech Athletic Director Betsy Mitchell has taken part in these debates for decades. As a world-class swimmer for the United States, she medaled at the 1984 and 88 Olympics. In between that, she swam Division I for Texas, part of a Longhorn program that won 3 national championships. So she's lived the life from both sides.
I had hoped that Division I would leave us, is what I really feel. And I feel that because the forces that drive big-time football and big-time basketball are awesome. They're just not what the vast majority of members of the organization do.
Touchdown, USC!
I'm not an enemy of big-time football and basketball. I'm quite a fan. They're very different. And the influences that come to Division III, to smaller schools that are a much different brand, are really challenging for us.
Deeper still lies the future of other sports like swimming, track, volleyball, and lacrosse. Could the ongoing changes ultimately leave some outside the tent without necessary funding?
Those sports are the ones that should be speaking up the most. There are great programs that are inclusive of those kinds of non-football basketball sports and that will will continue to do that and are absolutely guardians of all of those. And there are those who are not.
Which returns us to the fundamental question looming above all others. Can the NCAA retain enough of its influence to survive as the ruling entity of college sports?
Conferences and schools can make their own television deals. They can set their own rules. They can govern themselves. They can pass recruiting rules. And the NCAA comes in and swoops out a ton of money from the basketball tournament, ton of money from collegiate sports that could be going to the campuses.
I think for some current members there will be an NCAA and we'll be a part of it and it'll go on. But I do not think it'll look much like it does now. And I think there will come to rise other entities governing parts of college sports.
This cannot be overlooked either. College sports revenue has taken a huge hit due to COVID, none more so than Division I basketball and football. Now, because of that, many administrators are facing intense pressure to make up those shortfalls, all at the same time as the NCAA is actively working to loosen its regulations and authority. Darren?
Thanks, Ping. A lot of wait and see at this point, but little doubt that when it comes to the creation and evolution of this new model, players and coaches will lead the way. Up next, we'll get their thoughts on where this is all headed. After so many decades of reluctance, the NCAA has opened the gates to athletic compensation. So moving forward, what exactly will that mean to the players, coaches, and their programs? Rashawn Haylock with that part of the story.
Darren, the NCAA's decision to allow college athletes to profit off name, image, and likeness has been widely applauded, even if it did take decades. But with new freedom comes new concerns, especially for the coaches and players.
College athletes can be in commercials now?
Dr. Pepper, it's the one DJ deserves.
We see ourselves as products, as money. We know we can profit now, so we carry ourselves a certain way. And we care about our image even more.
I have opportunities to rock and, make some income as well as get some cool clothing, get some good merchandise, have some cool drinks, like little alkaline water deals and stuff like that. So it's really special that we have opportunity to do that.
For Slater, Singleton, and others, NIL has transformed the college experience. For the first time, offering players the ability to control their own destiny, but figuring out ground rules can be complicated, especially after so many decades of regulatory famine.
What is too much? Is millions of dollars too much? Or should there be no limit? Should certain players only get a certain amount of partnerships? Like, it's all fluid and it's kind of learning on the fly, but it's fun. It's fun.
It's also light years from the minefields that dictated arcane rules about the way players and coaches could interact off the field or floor. Restrictions that everyone now agrees were draconian.
I remember it was raining. I was an assistant coach and it was raining, heavily raining. One of our players called and asked, could we give him a ride? He didn't have a ride and it was just thunderstorm. And we can't, it's against the rules. Just little things like that.
Back when I first started, where you couldn't buy a player an extra Coca-Cola and go take them to coffee or whatever, and it would be a violation.
There are hungry nights that I go to bed and I'm starving. So something can change, something should change.
Shabazz Napier played 7 NBA seasons and before that helped lead the UConn Huskies to 2 NCAA championships. So it surprised many when he admitted to sometimes going to bed hungry during those years with the team. Stories like his embarrassed college sports enough to force the NCAA to make humanitarian adjustments. And over the past year, the pace of these changes has radically increased, generating a new learning curve for players and coaches.
If not necessarily in the locker room, where have you found you most had to adjust as the head coach of this program?
We have to present in our recruiting the opportunity for NIL, but it's been challenging because we can't set it up or facilitate it. So there's a fine line of what we can actually tell recruits or our own players because we can't promise them anything.
New constitution aside, coaches will always feel acute pressure to produce and win. A strong program translates to more NIL opportunities for players, as do the larger and more prestigious cities and markets, meaning no one is under any illusions about where the best players will land.
Even without name, image, and likeness, the cream of the crop are going to the Power 5 schools, and then it's a trickle down. So I don't think that's really going to impact recruiting and schools surviving.
For all the goodwill NILs have already generated between players and institutions, there are new apprehensions as well, such as, are we now designing a multi-tiered system when it comes to the players themselves?
Definitely, that's being created for sure.
If there's a person that's profiting this much off of NIL, I would think you'll want that person based on whether they're talented enough or they're popular. You would want them on your campus.
If their brand is at a level with social media that would allow them to get their own deal, then it's there for them. And I really think that that's great. I really do.
At the same time, the fundamentals of coaching will also likely shift as programs and the authority figures who run them must learn to relate to an evolving player mindset.
As a coach, you're concerned about every dynamic, that can impact your locker room. So it just adds another layer. Every team, has inequities. I mean, everybody doesn't get to start. Everybody doesn't get to shoot three-pointers. Everybody doesn't get to play as much as they want.
So you look at the NFL, the NBA, certain players have bigger sponsorship deals, whether it's shoe companies or sports drinks, or et cetera. Certain players will get bigger deals, and I think that'll trickle down to the college, and I think you'll see, I don't think there'll be a separation in the locker room. I think certain teammates will respect the fact that their friends and their teammates have the opportunity to do that, and I hope there's no jealousy in our locker room, because I think that can make it a little tough for a team to come together and stay together throughout a season.
But it is a start, one the NCAA had no choice but to enact. And with the profits generated for universities and conferences by sports, many believe NILs will prove to be only the beginning of the compensation model.
Thanks, Rashawn. As for some final thoughts, in this country, if you have a marketable talent, a skill, a gift, or an art, you should not be prohibited from generating revenue, either for yourself or your family. That is the essence of America. And while it's noteworthy that this has finally become a reality for college athletes, you have to wonder why it took so long. For David Pingalore and Rashawn Haylock, I'm Darren Horton. We'll see you next time with another special edition of KTLA Sports.